Is it working? Yeah. Okay. So I will start explaining the goal of the market analysis, which was the goal and which was not the goal of the market analysis. So the goal was to try to understand whether there were or there are any existing solutions in the market that could be used or could be leveraged when building the Simpl or the market analysis. And it's important to remark that the goal was not to be prescriptive. So if you check the report, it doesn't say this is the best tool to use, or you should be using this other tool or this combination of tools. Okay. So the first thing we did was to create a short list. You can see it here. This short list contains some products from the European Union, some products that are not European, that are all of them are open source. So we started with EGI. Most of you will know it. It's a federation of compute and storage resource providers. It's mainly focused on research and innovation. Then we have OpenStack. It's probably the most widespread open source solution in the world to provide services for cloud infrastructures. Then we analyzed also Vanilla Stack. It's a stack of cloud native solutions based on Kubernetes. It also contains or includes OpenStack, but it comes as well with Cloud Foundry, with some logging tools, with some monitoring tools, and so on. We analyzed Crossroad, which you can see is more focused on the data services part, and it's a solution already in use in Estonia or Finland, and it's a data exchange layer. And we finally analyzed the vast set or amount of products under the umbrella of the Linux and the Apache Foundation. So what we did with all these stacks was to try to map all their features with all the building blocks that Adrian and Jochen have shown before, and try to see which ones were covered and which ones were not. So here you can see the result, some conclusions. If you go to the report, of course, it's more extended. So the first conclusion we took or we arrived to, as it was previously anticipated, is that there's not one solution that can cover all the building blocks. So when implementing Simpl, we will have probably to combine two or more of these solutions. We also analyzed some more specific, specifically oriented to some building blocks tools, like for instance, Fireware that was mentioned before, especially focusing on the context broker. We analyzed the European Commission building blocks. We also went through the Eclipse Foundation, which has a particularly interesting product, the Data Space Connector, which I think it's already in use by Gaia X or planned to be used. We also studied some specific Kubernetes management tools like Harvester and Rancher. And for the data building blocks that were not covered by the previous tags, we also analyzed through that. So we had to dive into each of these solutions. We checked which building blocks could be covered by each of them, did the mapping, and try to understand if and how they could be combined between each other and with the stacks we shown earlier. So there are two conclusions, two takeaways from this market analysis. First one is, yes, of course, there are many tools that we can use, we can leverage when building smart middleware. Of course, they are not all of them are here. There are many more tools that could be leveraged, but we had a limited amount of time, and we decided this could be the most appropriate. But this, as I said, this is not supposed to be prescriptive, so this is just our opinion, and that not one stack, one solution can cover absolutely everything, so they have to be combined. So I think that's all about the market analysis. I'll be happy to take all the questions you have at the end of the sessions, and I will hand over to Andrea. She will explain the implementation roadmap we defined.
Thanks a lot, Sharad. And before jumping into the implementation roadmap, at first I would like to explain you a little bit how we created the implementation roadmap. What was our process? So here in this slide you can see again the capabilities that we identified, which are important for the Simpl platform. These are all the capabilities that will need to be implemented at one point to facilitate the exchange of data, applications, and infrastructure within the data spaces and across data spaces. But of course, all these capabilities couldn't be implemented from one day to the other, unfortunately. So therefore, we had to conduct several prioritization workshops together with the European Commission to identify which capabilities are the ones that are really the most important ones and which could create a minimum viable product to facilitate this data infrastructure and application exchange. And these must-have capabilities will be implemented at first, and then we also divided the rest of the capabilities into more processable packages that could be delivered within a year. So this is what we came up with as the minimum viable product. These will be the focus of 2024. And then the should have capabilities will be, 2023. The should have capabilities will be implemented in 2024. And then some more nice to have features will be added in 2025. Then after doing this prioritization exercise, we also worked on these guiding principles that helped us to define the implementation roadmap. And these were important for us to have a common understanding how we want to set up the implementation roadmap. So the solution should be designed and developed for and tested by several use cases. This is important to ensure that we don't only consider the requirements of one use case, but it is generic enough to fulfill the requirements of several use cases. Then regular demonstrations shall be organized to keep all the interested parties informed about the status of the implementation and provide them a platform to provide feedback and ask for features and provide the requirements. Then a reliable schedule needs to be established to inform all parties involved in the development. This is again important to have an organized development process and so that everybody knows when their part should be finished, when they have to provide feedback, and when they can tell their opinion. Then each release shall be made available for the project stakeholders, including the community. So the community, we mean it in a wider sense here. It means really every interested party who wants to participate in the development of the SMP, contribute and provide additional code development, or just express their opinion about the Simpl platform. And finally, the importance of documentation is also mentioned here because this is also extremely important to engage the community, and this has to be taken into account. Then here you can see really the high-level implementation roadmap after clarifying these guiding principles. We designed a roadmap for 2023 and then the consecutive 2 years. As you can see, there are different lanes showing the different processes that need to happen. First of all, the implementation itself, of course, which is preceded by the procurement of the contractors. Then the first year, 2023, again, the main focus will be the minimum viable product and the software development lifecycle of this minimum viable product, which covers the planning, the implementation itself, the testing, the documentation, and the maintenance of the software. And you can see that at the end of 2023, we will have our first major release, which will be the release of the MVP. So this will be the first usable piece of software that really creates value for the data spaces. But throughout 2023, we also planned a few milestones, as you can see. At first, a proof of concept, and then several smaller milestones to enable the monitoring of the progress and ensure that the development is on track. Then again, there will be further developments happening in 2024 and 2025. Then the testing environment, the next swim lane shows that we are aiming to set up a test environment where all the community members and everyone is able to test the SMP itself and provide their feedback. Then use case and community engagement. Here, we would like to increase the number of the participating use cases gradually. To ensure the sustainability, we would like to start with a lower number and then onboard the use cases gradually. And when the MVP is finished, then we would like to provide everyone the opportunity to test it, every use case. And finally, the governance. This is also an important topic, and we will talk about this in details later on. But here I would like to mention already that we are planning to have two different governance models. At first, during the MVP development, it should be a more project-like governance setup. And then after the community is already mature enough, then we would like to give them more responsibility and involve them in the governance. And that's what you see here, that there we will switch to an EDIC/community-based governance. Then to go into even more details, here you can see some important dependencies that we identified. First of all, the procurements will need to be finalized by the end of this year, because without this, of course, we cannot start anything. We cannot start the development in 2023. Then the selection of use cases needs to be finalized by 2023. So it is not clear yet which data spaces will be the Simpl platform tested on, but we would like to select 2 use cases at first and then onboard 2 further ones to test the third milestone release. Then the integration by use cases, you can see that there are several number threes depicted in this picture, because the use cases will need to deploy the Simpl platform again and again as soon as a milestone release is released, and they will need to test it and use it to discover bugs or issues. Then refine the roadmap for the next major release. Of course, it's not possible or feasible to foresee the future for the next 3 years, unfortunately. So that's why we foresee a refinement of the roadmap again and again before each milestone release, to understand what the market requires or needs, and refine the list of the features that needs to be implemented. And finally, reevaluate the governance approach. Again, my colleague will explain this in details, but the governance approach will also need to be evaluated if the community is mature enough to take over more responsibility. Then I would like to go into more details regarding the first year of the implementation, which will focus on the MVP development. Here you can see the processes related to the first year. And on the left side, you can see all the milestone releases again. As you can see, we are planning to implement these milestone releases one after the other, but there will be an overlap. So the preparation for the next milestone release can always be started in parallel with the implementation of the previous milestone release. And in the preparation, there will be some one-time activities such as mobilizing the team or putting the governance in place, setting up the contracts with the contractors or the meeting structure. But then again, the recurring activity that needs to happen again and again is the alignment and agreement on the content of the backlog. So the features that will be implemented. And then this will be followed by the implementation and some bug fixing period. And under these milestone releases, you can see the integration and end-to-end testing. So this means that the use cases, again, will need to deploy the Simpl platform and need to test it. The colors here match the colors of the milestone release. So the green, blue, and orange colors show which milestone release they have to integrate and test. And finally, the community engagement is extremely important for this project because it will be an open source project, and we would like to emphasize that the community will need to be involved in the testing, we are relying on their commitment also regarding the development. Then again, last concept that I would like to explain to you here is that we differentiate between major bugs and minor issues, because there will be some major bugs which really can crash the whole Simpl platform, and this would really prevent the users from continuing the testing. And therefore, these bugs will have to be fixed immediately. And that's what you see here, that these bugs, if they will be discovered, they will be fixed within the bug fixing period that follows the implementation. But of course, there will be some minor issues or improvement requests emerging and coming from the users. And we are not planning to fix these bugs immediately. That's why they will be implemented as part of the next milestone implementation phase, as you can see. And the release candidates, they will contain all the necessary features related to a given milestone release, but they may contain some serious bugs still. And therefore, these are really the software increments which will contain every important things, but they will need to be tested by the community and the use cases. And that's all I wanted to say about the implementation roadmap. And I hand over the word to Sebastian to explain the governance.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, so we have here a lane at the bottom on the governance. So in 2022, so this year we want to set up the commission-driven governance model, and we want to maintain this model during the implementation of the MVP. But simultaneously, we already want to set up this EDIC / community-driven governance model, and we want to transition to this EDIC community governance model in 2024 and maintain it in 2024 when the community is mature enough. And this governance model should last not only for the implementation of all the functionalities, but also to run this Simpl application. So if we go to the next slide, you see here, this is the first governance model. Here we leverage the PM square methodology. On top, we have the business governing layer, which is more the vision and strategy determination. There we have the Simpl governance board. They approve and sign off of the deliverables. They authorize planned deviations and high-level scope changes. And they provide high-level monitoring and control over the project while keeping the project focused on its objectives. Next to it, on the same layer, we have the member states. The member states advise the Simpl governance board, but in collaboration with the Simpl governance board, they make or they set up the strategic objectives for the project. The layer under it is the steering layer, which is general project direction and guidance. Here we have the project steering committee. The project steering committee steers the project in a more operational aspect and reviews critical incidents. It also reviews issues and risks related to the long-term development of the project. Next to it, we have the Change Advisory Board. The Change Advisory Board advises the Project Steering Committee, and there we have one change manager and multiple members, which are the business owner, product owner, and technical experts from the Commission, but also from contractors, which will be asked to join the Change Advisory Board if there is a question to be asked to them or if there is an opinion needed from them. Under it, we have the directing layer, which is mobilization and monitoring. There we have on the Commission side the business owner and product owner. The business owner maintains the business case and checks if the outcomes are still in line with the business objectives and its priorities. Then we have the product owner, which is accountable for the product backlog and the technical aspects of the development of the Simpl application. Then we have one contractor which is supporting DG Connect with driving the project, and then we have multiple contractors and their project directors that will deliver this project. This project director or these project directors represent the interests of those developing and delivering the deliverables. On the right, in the same layer, we have senior representatives of business use cases. So in the MVP, it's important that we have some use cases that we can already test the features we have. So they are there to give us feedback in the directing layer. Then under it, we have the managing layer, which is a more day-to-day operation management. There we have multiple project managers, one on the Commission side, and then for each contractor, we have a project manager. Then at the bottom, we have the performing layer, where the work is performed, the deliverables are prepared, and we have European Commission subject matter experts, which will advise the core team of the contractors if there are any questions, if they need an opinion. Yep, that's it. Then we have multiple contractors. The first contractor is again to support DG Connect with the project work, but then other contractors' core team is for the development, deployment, testing, and support. As Andrea said, it's really important to have the community members and their input. So that's why we also included them there so they can test and give their input. Then we want to transition to the next governance model, which is more an EDIC community-driven governance model. This governance model is based on the EDIC regulation and key ideas from open source governance models. At the top, we have the more strategic layer, which is the EDIC. There we have two mandatory bodies, which is the director. The director is the executive lead and legal responsible for the EDIC. It's appointed by the Assembly of Members, and in the Assembly of Members, we have member states, the Commission, international organizations, and private entities. And this Assembly of Members prepare the strategic vision, the strategic objectives and the vision of the project. Then we have a change advisory board. It's the same board as we had in the previous one, which advises the director and the officers on decisions that need to be taken. Then we have the officers, which is more in an operational phase or operational position. We have the business leader, which translates the strategic objectives to more operational activities. We have the secretariat, which performs the admin part of the Simpl, and we have the technical committee, which makes decisions for the Simpl application. Under it, we have delegates. The delegates have decision power to specific areas, as you can see, a release team, a security team, so they can take decisions there. Next to it, we have developers. Developers contribute by developing code and helping in new functionalities. Then we have the community, which can also test and give their opinion or write remarks in the documentation. We want to include the community more gradually, and as you can see here on our graph, we have community applicants. So a community member can apply, and then we have a new member team that can approve this community member. That community member becomes a developer. If that community member, now a developer, wants even more responsibility, it can be nominated to become part of the technical committee, but also can become a delegate. So this way, over the time, we want to include more and more community members in this governance model. As a last slide, I have a little bit more color. This is the resource allocation. We think it's important because some roles will have a full-time position, such as the director and the business leader, the ones in green. These will be staff expenses, but then other positions, such as the assembly of members, change advisory board, and some delegates will not have a full-time position, and this will become a operational expense. An EDIC is a governance model that can. An EDIC is a governance model in collaboration with the European Commission member state, but there can also be private entities and international organizations all combined. It's a combined effort, for example, to deliver this Simpl application.